start with you? Do you want to kind of just talk a little bit about what's
Sure,
going
who
on?
I am and what I'm doing?
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
so I'm with Peaceful Households, I know you guys probably know me, I'm kind of all over the place. Currently, I am working a couple of contracts. One of them is with Early Milestones, and we're doing a child abuse and neglect prevention framework for El Paso County. Some of you may have seen my email blast about our new public survey. This is a really fast grant. It has to be done by July 31st, so it's like running fast. And what we're really looking at is like really overarching ideas. A lot of it is around early childhood, it's parent connectiveness, it's all based on strengthening families concepts. So it's gonna be a little bit of a heavy lift getting the whole community there. So any help you guys can get out there and speak up about this stuff, it helps. The other thing I do currently still is I do contract with Community Health Partnerships, and I'm still doing some ACE trainings with them. So, and we were just talking about, we're gonna have our conference April 24th this year. I have booked Laura Porter, who is ACE Interface. Laura's kind of an interesting person. Her background is she's got some city government background. She co-founded ACE Interface with Rod Anda, who is the co-investigator. Laura does a lot of traveling. Lately, she's been doing a lot of work around suicides and teens and all kinds of things, but she's gonna kind of come in and help us get a little bit more organized as a community. And we're also bringing in Tim Grove from St. A's. I don't know if anybody knows St. A's. They're out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They are really, really big. They have done trauma informed, and they actually are hosts like we are with ACE Interface. And Tim does a lot of work around schools, trauma informed schools, and they're also a residential treatment program sort of thing. So they have a lot of really, really good background. We're gonna do it like a workshop. We're gonna start out with Tim talking about 7 essential ingredients, becoming trauma informed, and then moving into hopefully doing some agency work and then maybe some community work. And they're both gonna stay and run it together. So it'll be a really good conference.
Nice.
So I'm excited because they bring a lot of the things that I know, a lot of us in the community knows, but there's other people in the community that don't know it. So it'll help us get maybe more cohesive in the statement. So, and that's in April, which I think will help with leverage our framework work. So there we go.
Kathy, can you say Tim's last name and
Grove, Grove,
with
St. A's, and it's in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He has a relationship with Tim Hinkle here in town. I don't know if you
Jim
know-
Hinkle?
Jim Hinkle, sorry, Jim Hinkle. Jim actually goes to their facility and has done a lot of their training, and that's where he's brought back a lot of his trauma-informed care from. And evidently, St. A's has some relationship with a foundation here in Colorado Springs. I don't understand all of that, but they know our community pretty well, so I think that's helpful. So,
I think Jim mentions St. A's in his part of the presentation, doesn't he?
yes, he does. And what I understand is, and I might butcher this, but there's an agency, Fostering Hope, maybe? And one of the people with Fostering Hope is married to someone who worked at or still works at St. A's, and that's the connection, and I'm not sure exactly how that all works, but that's how Jim got in contact with him. And Jim has gone out there, because they do these really big trainings that are like lethal, and they're like, $3,000 to $5,000, but Jim's gone out and done some of them, so. It'd be something we can look at doing if we like St. A's. Nice stuff to, have good contacts to bring it back in and do some community trainings.
Thank you, Kathy. We're just going around doing updates.
Introductions and updates. Yep.
Okay, Colleen Batchelor with the Resource Exchange. We just started last week a new Positive Solutions for Families training, and I think there are about 25 parents enrolled in that training, and it's at Sunnyside Christian Church on North Murray. And then we start the second group of those trainings at Pikes Peak Christian Church tomorrow for 6 weeks. And that one has 45 parents enrolled. And they are going to introduce a 7th session with introducing ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experiences study, to the parents in that group. The church is providing counselors that they have within their group, as well as table ambassadors who have attended these trainings before, who can sit with parents and kind of help them process the information. So it's just turning into this remarkable collaboration. So we're very excited about those. And ECMH is just bursting at the seams with referrals.
Good to know, okay, very good.
And a staffing update, so Linda Bates, who was my southern ECMH, had to leave us to care for her husband, who has some challenges, physical health challenges. And so we have made an offer to another person who starts on the 29th. So I'll keep you updated on the progress of that, but we're very excited that we were able to hire that position really quickly.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting that people are actually seeking us out before we even have positions available to say, I'm interested,
Oh,
and
that's
you get a position. That's how this one happened.
And what do you hire? I'm sorry. is there-
LPCs, LCSWs, BCBAs, clinical psych,
Okay.
depends on the experience more than anything. But that's what we look for.
I just had somebody reach out and was looking for a job who might fall in that, so I'll send them that way, that you can
Please
just
do.
put them on file.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
That's great. And it's really exciting that Positive Solutions is so full, and that, we always hear that it's difficult for parents to, to get, and then to go for 6 sessions, 7 sessions to commit to that, so.
kind of along that, I keep remembering things, I apologize, I didn't write this down. We also have our research database set up and ready for these trainings.
That was my next
And
question.
so we are gonna code them with participant IDs that can tell us not only which session they're evaluating of the 6 sessions, but also which group they're a part of. So they're at Sunnyside Church, they're at Pikes Peak, they're at one of Alliance for Kids, Positive Solutions for Families. And then we can group them to get the big picture of all 6 sessions, but we can also evaluate each individual
That's
session, which will be, I think, really good. And our ACEs survey is also in that research database.
I have a new updated one, do you wanna look at it?
Yeah, and I'll
Because I
send
have
it to
some
you.
questions about change that
Okay.
might be more helpful to
Okay,
you.
yep.
Okay.
And it is also now beginning to look at our ECMH work and pre and post assessments there. We're just getting to post assessments with a lot of these kiddos, but I'm looking forward to seeing the data of that in the relatively near future.
That's really exciting.
It's very exciting. It's been a long time coming.
And the assessment data, as that falls through. And I could just echo that, that's what we're, that's, and it's a good thing, but we're being held to that data piece. And that's okay, but we're hearing that from our funders as well.
Yeah.
What is the impact? I don't care how many people are there, what is the impact?
Yeah.
So, thanks, Colleen.
Hi, I recognize some of you, but you probably don't remember me. I'm Sarah Kennedy. I'm a director of a nonprofit supporting families who are raising deaf and hard of hearing kids. And I haven't been able to attend for a very long time, but this is a topic area that's near and dear to our hearts at our group, and I'm presenting on a similar topic in Austria in June.
In Austria, how fun, Sarah! Oh, gosh! Somewhere to go.
Yeah.
Do you need any help with the presentation?
Yes, I do. I don't think that involves a ticket though. It's one of those where you get a tiny bit of money to support you going, but mostly it's a labor of love.
Yeah.
And you get to travel, so.
That's
Very
great.
fun, that's exciting.
It is exciting.
Yeah, it's a European conglomerate of organizations and parent groups that are trying to get early intervention going. They do some screening in those countries, but they don't do intervention really yet. So, of all the topics to talk about.
Most welcome, I'm glad you're here.
Yes, thank you.
Exciting. I'm Mary Estrada with CPCD. We're also taking off with Positive Solutions. We got a grant to fund training for a partnership, which we're really excited about. So we trained in Positive Solutions, all of our behavioral health consultants, and about half of our family advocates. So we've got probably 20 to 25 staff that are trained in Positive Solutions. And so that training happened first semester, and now we're starting the trainings, and we've got a goal of doing at least 5 larger group trainings with families, and we're trying to do that in a partnership between behavioral health and family services, so that, it's great for team building, it's great for communication, it's great for the various perspectives. And what we're working on so that we have good enrollment and we keep good enrollment is kind of a champion system. So we're marketing through relationships rather than just sending out flyers. So we are doing a flyer blitz, but then we're really working hard for teachers to say, hey, I know this trainer and she's amazing. Or a family advocate to say, this is a really neat class, and could I go to the first one with you? So that parents are feeling really connected before the class starts, and maybe attending with their sort of safe person for the first time or two. So that's underway, and we've got that happening both one-on-one individually in parent homes when we have parents that aren't real hip about coming to a class, and then also some smaller classes. Then we, just kind of an exciting update for us, we have done a Teapot assessment on every single one of our preschool classrooms. So of those 53 that we Teapotted this fall, we have 30 that are at Fidelity, which is neat. That's a fine number, but what's really exciting is that we had another 15 who are between 71% and 79%. So we believe those 15 are gonna be at Fidelity this spring when we post-test. So we're pretty dazzled by that number. I don't know that I would have, and a lot of these are brand new teachers, so.
Do you all need to know what the Teapot is?
Yes, I do.
I'm so sorry. Okay, so thank you. Sorry. So the Pyramid Plus approach to social emotional programming for early childhood, it's a tiered approach that basically looks at both prevention and promotion, and then individualized support for kids who are struggling, kids and their families. So the Teapot is the evidence-based assessment tool that we use to see how a classroom staff is implementing Pyramid Plus. And Fidelity is basically, you've scored an 80% out of 100 or higher. So that 71 to 79%, those people are just on the brink of really being at Fidelity.
That's exciting, guys.
It's pretty cool.
When I think about when you talked about the Pyramid Plus project 4 years ago, or whatever that was, and I was like, well, we've got a few classrooms, because you've been doing
Just a
it,
few.
and you're at almost 46 now, if I'm doing my math right, 31 plus 15, possibly by fall. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's gonna be,
Congratulations.
I'm no good at math, but I'm thinking we might be at 80%. At 80% of our staff is at Fidelity.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's fabulous.
Isn't that
That is
amazing?
fabulous.
Yeah, and when we started this, the center really did say it'll take you 3 or 4 years, which was a great beacon of hope.
Yeah.
But we didn't know if that was gonna pan out, and wow, it really has panned out.
That's fabulous.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
There's just such a, the work that I think we all do is hard work sometimes, but all these rewards that you're getting from people and the positive things, and 45 parents signed up and all these positive solutions and the presentations. I know for me, it just makes, okay, yes, we're making that impact.
Well, I have to say kudos to you reaching out and doing one-on-one, because we all know the key to resiliency is relationships, so good job.
Yes,
Good
there you
job.
go.
Yes.
Good job.
We've learned, we've really been plugging away for a long time, and we've learned by our mistakes, and so, and Positive Solutions is the perfect opportunity for this, because it is such a relationship-based program. That's just its basis, so it sort of gave us permission to get creative.
Because I just got some stuff recently that it talks about how, and actually it breaks it down, and if I can find it, but it talks about how over communities that do what they call trauma-informed or the relationship-based programming in their communities, that they say some of them do it for like 20 or 28 years, years. And they're saying that they've saved $601 billion in public programming through this. It's an amazing number. I gotta find it.
I would
if I
love
can find it.
that
Yes.
article.
It's a PowerPoint slide I just got. Let me see if
Okay.
I can find it. Maybe I said it
Subject
wrong, but I
review feature.
think that's what it says.
I love
So-
that, so, we're
Let me
not
see what it
at
is.
25 years yet, at least with this particular model, but
So they base it on, they use the RFS survey, and then what they do is they've added the resiliency questions, and they've started trying to pull data that way. So if I find it, let me look for it, because it's
Great.
interesting.
congratulations. Jill Valier, coworker.
Hi, I'm Kelly, I'm the Quality Improvement Manager here at Alliance for Kids. For Pyramid, we just put out our application for community coaching. We have a couple more slots that have opened up, so we have a deadline of January 19th for that, and then those applications will come to this group for scoring against the rubric to be able to get out there and support some more sites. We're finding it's very interesting with the work, and we have been doing some more relationship-based ways of engaging providers, but the depth of the work that's required for pyramid coaching is so much different than any other type of coaching that's been going on in our community. So it has really, within our group, promoted some really interesting conversation. And sometimes for a site administrator to have that going on within their community is a lot, and it takes a lot of support and communication and all of those kind of things. So we're really looking at that piece as we move forward with new community coaches, because we're just going into a classroom supporting a teacher. So kind of how to strengthen that foundation for administrators as well.
I'm Madeline Schmidt. I'm a parent support provider with Safe Care. One of our parent support providers just got certified, which is great because that means we have more room for the new families that are coming into the program. And it's starting to pick back up as, we get past those holidays, which is great. So we're getting a lot of new families in our program right now.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. Is anybody familiar with Safe Care and the early prevention target, right?
Yep.
Prevention, that's super, yeah. And you've had that project now for 2 years, is that right?
Yes, we're going on our, might be 2.5, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome, that's great.
I'm Stacy Holmes, and I'm the Education Director at Ruth Washburn Cooperative Nursery School. And we are in the middle of pyramid coaching. We have 4 teachers being coached. And starting in February, we hope to have our positive solutions for families class going. I would just faint if 25 families came to our, we still have that, it's, we're looking to possibly reach out to some home childcare providers, but within our community, just in our school, that would be an incredible turnout. I would be happy if we had 10 families participate, would be amazing. But we'll see where it goes. We're just starting to promote it, put the flyers out. We have a couple of people from our pyramid leadership team at our school that will be doing I think they're calling it a table talk, and have some information about positive solutions, about pyramid, about the social emotional curriculum that our school is using, and kind of helping families to realize that this is all the same, working together. So we'll see. Yeah.
Exciting news. Yeah, stay tuned, right?
Yes, stay tuned.
That's great.
I just want to add a little plug. The first time I did Positive Solutions, I only had 3 parents. And it was magnificent. And so I would really say, even 10 parents, I mean, the richness of discussion that happens and the growth that happens in the relationships, I really think less is really fantastic.
Oh, I feel like there's kind of a
Absolutely.
balance though, you have to have enough for the conversation and the sharing, you know, and it could get to be too large, yes, but if you don't have enough, it seems, you know, everybody's really quiet. You know, so it's kind of that balance, trying to find that balance,
So I just took a class on how to do parent cafes and things, when they said, if you think if your room is gonna be too quiet, put soft music on in the background and it fills your silences. So if you're worried
I
about that.
like that.
There you
We'll
go.
Pass that along to
Just
our
learn that
presenter.
this
That was a
week.
good idea.
Just, they said soft, just instrumental music of some sort, that just, it doesn't feel like you're supposed to run classes. So.
Thank you, that's a good tip.
I don't know, try it out. let me
Yeah,
know.
we'll see, we'll see, yeah.
Right.
Do you want me to give an update on the Pyramid Plus trainings?
Sure, that'd be great.
So we had a really low enrollment for the spring Pyramid Plus training. So we're working with Melissa and Nicole to push it back just a little bit and figure out why there was such a low attendance as well, or registration, as well as figure out ways to increase the registration and just get that going. Erin, our training specialist, is going to be leaving, so just kind of transitioning and figuring that out for the in-between.
Can I ask a really dumb question? A Pyramid Plus and Positive Solutions, is that just early childhood education or can it be other classrooms?
I've heard that it can be used,
Kelly, do you have in regards to Pyramid Plus for coaching or training?
I don't know how high up it can go.
Okay.
I know that early childhood has been its focus, you know, all the way from infant toddler through the end of pre-K. So, yeah.
I'm sure you need it more control.
That's okay.
I can tell you that Positive Solutions is applicable for older children, but the examples they use in the training are focused on early childhood, but like, the parents that have attended our trainings often have both young children and older children. And so we have pushed to expand the supports and resources and examples to apply to older children, but the training itself doesn't really offer that.
I was just curious because I've had some schools reach out and want me to come in and talk about ACEs, but for them to do trauma informed is just such a heavy lift. And they're having so many problems with disconnects with their families and rifts. I was just kind of thinking, wow, wouldn't that be nice if we could just take it into some of these other struggling schools that maybe do have elementary age kids, but I don't know if that would be a crossover or if it's anything we could figure out, but it sounds like it's really helpful programming, so.
I've always had a dream to take it into kindergartens because those kids that are in our programs really tend to hit a brick wall when they go to a kindergarten that doesn't have all of these supports, and so,
Mary, do you mean Pyramid Plus and Positive Solutions, or, I mean, what a fantastic dream, and I think that's something that, boy, that's a great vision for as we proceed and what are our next steps, but would you see both, or would you just see one or the other, or probably both, the two,
I think
Jen?
they're a lovely package deal. And,
Absolutely.
you know, one complements the other, so both.
That's a great point.
Because I think what happens a lot of times, people who have been exposed to early childhood, then they get into the regular public schools, and that's just really, those kids that are at higher risk, who haven't had anything in their previous, they hit that kindergarten, and, I mean, I sat in a school the other day and just heard just horrific things that are said between teachers and parents, and it's just, you know, there's gotta be a better way to do this.
Great. Not great, but good discussion.
No, I was just wondering if we could do it, it's be worthwhile finding out.
So Piggy, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to say one thing about the trainings and see if the group agreed. We were kind of thinking that perhaps we built the system. When we look at Pyramid Plus training enrollment being low, we were saying, well, a lot of implementation sites are providing their own trainings now, so there's, you know, less of a pool of people to.
And opening the door, which is wonderful.
Right,
So
opening the door to
opening-
other people
yes.
attending their trainings.
That was the goal. It's a systems building project.
Right.
You know, let's put this in the hands of the community and let it grow from there.
I've also heard from a few people calling about registering. We had to raise prices for this training because some of our funding is going away. So I've heard that because the price is raised, it's harder for
Yeah.
individuals to get the money to sign up for the training. So they're asking about our scholarships or just assistance to pay for it.
And we're also we're revising the procedure for scholarships. And so in the past, we had let them apply for a scholarship, and what we found was, unfortunately, there was a heavier dropout in the Pyramid Plus training for those with a scholarship that didn't have as much of a commitment. And so we're reversing that now, and they can apply for a scholarship, and then after you get certified, come to the training and registration, and then after you get certified and complete the training, then go ahead and apply for the scholarship, and then we can kick back your, refund the money that you registered for. So, I don't know if we can change that or be open to other comments on that, but I think that, I can understand why it might have an impact on the attendance and so forth, but I think it still holds people being responsible for what they receive. However, we are looking at the registration fee. And so for some of you know, the Colorado Health Foundation, which has supported this project for the last over 3 years. We do have funding that it has transpired, it will continue until the end of May now. And so we're looking at the funding and saying, okay, through that, will we be able to reduce the price a little bit for this last registration? And so we'll know more on that in about a month. And so be able to kick that out back out to the community at a lower rate. But the issue is then we're out of money. So if we do open it up to the community again for Pyramid Plus, let me preface that with, we do actually have 2 applications out there for continuing support for Pyramid Plus training within the community. And it's not in any way, shape, or form at the level we did before, but it's at least to continue the Pyramid Plus training support that would be able to offer it at a lower rate. If we do not receive any of those, it would be at a much higher rate. I can tell you Denver charges about $450 per participant for their training. So we'll see. Stay tuned.
UNC had a grant to increase the availability of early childhood special educators in rural areas of Colorado. And they've seen the exact same thing, that they give the scholarships and then these students do not fulfill their obligations to complete the degree program.
So it wasn't just us, but
And I think what you're saying is fine, because that's how they do it in nursing. When we do our nursing degrees, and you can go into public health or rural areas, you have to work 2 years, and then they'll remove your loan, but otherwise they put it as a loan on you, and then they take the loan back. So I think that's fair. It is fair.
Yeah, you have to have some kind of buy-in that keeps you there.
So I appreciate that, but I did want to update the group on that, so thanks, Mia. Just a couple of quick updates before we go into discussion. I know we're running a little bit low, but just to let you know that the Rural Early Child Mental Health Specialist renewal grant, and as well that we contract with TRE that Colin was referring to, and the mid-year report, both were submitted today, this morning. I'll send you the final copy. We press the button. So we hopefully will hear back. Actually, you don't hear back until like the end of April, to be real honest with you. And it's a quick turnaround. It's like you hear back at the end of April and then you continue on May 1st, it kicks out. So FYI, those both have been submitted for nothing changed. It's identical, correct, Colleen? So for that. The other thing that as we move along, and not today, but there are some new social emotional materials, a lot of them that are kicking out from a launch grant in Denver that I'd like to bring to this group at the next meeting, and we can actually make that organizational or community relevant, and there's some really good stuff there.
Nice.
They spent tens and thousands of dollars on marketing material, and part of the goal was to let other communities replicate this. So a lot of it is just starting to kick out. I got the first notice, and I thought it'd be available last week, but it wasn't, so very soon. Does anybody know, Colleen, do you have an early intervention update on funding or the meetings that are happening at the state level now? Is it early ABCD project?
Oh, okay, so yes, so there is a Early Childhood Developmental Screening Policy Council, I think is the name of it.
Okay.
And I don't know how long they've been meeting, but I joined at the very end of last year and attended my first meeting, and they're really looking at the full picture of developmental screening, referral, and then follow-up. And they really want to learn from communities, but then reinforce what is working and what are the challenges and so forth. So I can provide updates as they get some of those things developed.
I think that'd be helpful. I think we've invited the ABCD group to be a part of this and continuing that discussion. And so that'd be great. Colleen, thank you.
Ginger's gonna join this council with me. So,
Yay,
yeah,
that'd be
as a
super.
parent, kind of.
Super. Okay, let's move on to, Colleen, do you want to introduce your guest and have any just discussion on ACEs and?
Sure, so, well, Kathy and I have met numerous times, and
I've had many lives.
through several of those meetings, I kind of approached her with partnering around getting a number of our staff trained as master ACE trainers, because we wanted to be able to go out and train others, and particularly within our own agency, around adverse childhood experiences. We have invested heavily in early childhood mental health in our program, and so really wanted to just build that capacity even further. So we sent, I think, 14 or 15 people to that training, and we then took that information and presented it to all 130 of our early intervention and family support staff in the fall. And now we're beginning to kind of look at how we integrate that into our team discussions of families and families who may be challenged with full engagement with our program, or can't really participate in supports for their child's general development because they are dealing with so many other things. And we wanted better ways to approach and support those families. So we're now integrating that into our teaming efforts. We are starting to integrate it into our Positive Solutions for Families trainings. And then as we begin to talk about our autism services, it's linked to so many different things related to developmental disability that we're really expanding. Our occupational therapists are getting heavily involved because of the self-regulation and sensory kind of integration strategies that they can offer that will help with resilience. So Kathy and I are also going to be presenting at the Rocky Mountain Early Childhood Conference together in March. And I just thought it would be a really good idea for her to come and talk with us about expanding beyond just agencies, and how do we as a community begin to, as an early childhood community, begin to think about how we support this effort.
Well, that is the million-dollar question, and I think the biggest problem when we look at communities is people want us to give out a package, and there isn't a package, right? And like we were talking about, relationships are key, right? And we're talking about how we can work together as agencies, because I think that's the biggest thing. Colleen and I have talked a little bit. I worked on the Colorado Opportunity Project, and I'm still doing part of it, where for 2 years my role was to get people involved in evidence-based programs. And it didn't seem to matter how I did it, I couldn't ever move getting people enrolled into programming, which just keeps highlighting to me more and more about what we need to do. And a lot of that is just building those really close relationships with our clients. The other thing is asking them where they are, because we can't give them a treatment plan. They have to be involved in that process, no matter how painful that is to us. Because if I can talk to you about your diabetes, but you're worried about where you're gonna sleep tonight, you don't give two shits about my diabetic plan, to be quite honest, right? So it's part of it is looking how to build this bigger community. And I think part of it is just that, I think we need to understand that we can't do everything for all of our clients, that there are other people that have a lot of expertise. But the other thing is too, is that making sure when we do these referrals and we start working with our clients, that we help them actually get that referral done and make sure that it's actually what they want to do. At CHP, what we decided to do was we started looking at food insecurity. It was our big push, because I looked at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If I'm talking to a client as a provider, and they're more worried about their food, I looked at it and I thought, if I can build a relationship where I can get their basic need met, then maybe they're gonna buy into my programming better, right? So it's that meeting people where they're at. So part of what we're trying to do is just getting that common language, and that was what was so important about why we picked ACE Interface, and we paid $60,000 to Dr. Anda to come in the first time. It was a big lift. We have no grant funding. I currently quit my job and I'm working Peaceful Households full-time for the first time in my life. What we did was that we felt that that was really a good point to start. And we wanted that common language and we wanted common ideas out there. What's most interesting is I was just talking with ACE Interface, and what they're finding is there's a lot of people out there running around right now talking trauma-informed. Be very careful who you listen to. Laura said right now 80% of her calls and her consults are to go in and fix things that other people call trauma-informed. Be very careful. I think that it's very easy to go around and use the word trauma, if you want to be trauma-informed, but if you don't understand what leads to that trauma, how it affects the brain, how it affects the family, how it's intergenerational, you're not going to get anywhere. So those are some of the things that are kind of been on my mind lately. I did find this statistic, and it just basically said, per year avoided caseload costs in child welfare, juvenile justice, public medical costs associated with births to teen mothers were calculated to be over $601 million, on average of $120 million per year. For a public investment of $3.4 million, they were able to drop that. So, I mean, you think about this, and it's a big thing, and it's simply, I have slide after slide here if you guys actually wanted to look at them, but it shows about how, what they call help, and this is interesting, it's having 2 or more people you can rely on. That's how they defined help. And that with just having those help supports, they found that when they went through the BRS study, they added those resiliency questions, and people with 4 or more ACEs, because they scored those ACEs, they had 8 of the 10 questions, and then they looked at it, with those supports, they were able to drop by like over 50%. The people who felt like it improved their being able to go to work, less depressed days, less days of feeling sick. They have just number after number after number, and this is all out of the state of Washington because they've been doing it for quite a while. But it's just understanding that as a community, we have to build in those supports. And the key is relationships. And the other thing is that if we can actually get this whole idea into the community, we start removing a lot of those stigmas, which is going to help a lot. So it's changing that question. What's the question we changed, Colleen?
It's not what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you.
Yeah. So that's really what we're trying to do. So right now I'm working on, not only with Colleen on some of the stuff she's doing, but we're also doing this grant with Early Milestones, which is putting into the framework for the whole community. So we pulled together a lot of data around like homelessness, mental health, a lot of different pieces. And you know, when you look at El Paso's county numbers, we're not that bad. Although the only thing that I'm a little concerned about is if you look at our base wages compared to what the cost escalation has been. What is it, childcare went up 21% and wages only went up 12% in the last few years, I think was a statistic I saw somewhere off the county roads that map, you know, so I mean, that's a huge statistic. And I think part of the problem is that we have a lot of Denver people moving down to our area. And the wages are higher in Denver, so I'm a little concerned about that. The biggest problem I see is housing costs, and the next biggest one is childcare costs, believe it or not.
And that's good, we love that analysis because we are very concerned about the minimum wage going up. How that's gonna impact families with childcare.
You know, and I'll tell you, I've been on a real journey the last couple of years. I took on some responsibility of grandkids and working with a struggling child of my own. And we were so excited when we got him a better job, right? And then he lost all of his benefits. And then he had to move into my house because he couldn't afford anything. And they're still struggling. So now he's back out on his own home, but we provide all the childcare. It's the other reason why I kind of had to quit, because I have to be there to get kids on and off the bus. 4 children, aftercare, just to get kids to stay over 1 hour after school would have been $1,000 a month. They can't afford it. There's no way they can afford that. So there is a lot of concern, I think, around A, the cost of childcare, good education in those childcare settings. And the other thing I see is housing. Housing is really gonna be a problem.
Kathy, can I confirm, and I so appreciate this discussion, did you say you're looking at the data that you're just collecting right now, and you're suggesting this is a preliminary finding?
So
That
what
will
we
be-
did was I just pulled some data so that people could have an understanding of if we're gonna talk about childcare and child abuse and maltreatment, you have to understand what are the drivers, right?
Right.
So we looked at this data, and let me pull it. And what we found was, what I did was I went to like Homeward Bound, talked about, got data from really good places, and what I was finding was there is a huge really concerned about the cost of childcare, which seems to be really growing. And then the other one I saw as a concern was housing. I haven't gotten, I gotta present the rest of this to the group, it's up to them to look at, but I was somewhat concerned about what we were seeing. So there was a statement in childcare, this came out of quality of life indicators, so it probably was a statement from, and it just said childcare is expensive. It says in a report by Childcare Aware using 2014 data, Colorado was the fifth. Mhm. We have the seventh least affordable for a center-based, and from 07 to 14, childcare for infants increased 21%, while the median increase only grew 12%. So you can see that's a huge disconnect. And if you think about it in terms of El Paso County, we're probably paying a lot more than what we can afford, I would think, because we have less wages. So I saw a statistic that talked about wages in 2015 for El Paso County were $896 a month versus $1,042 in the state of Colorado. So you can see our wages are lower. There was also, we do pretty good with getting our kids into CCAP, though. I will give you guys that. That seems to be something that we've seen a lot. I'm trying to find the table. But basically what it says is that for housing in El Paso County, most of our parents between either paying rent or for their house are paying over 30% of their income towards maintaining just being in that structure. So that's not even the other costs associated. You know, if you get over 30% of your income, you're really struggling. So those were the big things that I saw when I was looking at this. I don't know if that helps you with any of your, the other thing that was interesting is our rate of kids as teenagers, and I know this isn't this group, is participating in sports or outside activities as far as like the Y or the county, or the city sports. We don't have that many kids participating, and some people feel for that funding or cost. But you look at the number of kids we have and then the number of those programs, it's not really all that high. Which, if you're looking and you're worried about teen suicides and teen numbers being 13% of El Paso County teens said that they felt disconnected, and we don't have them participating in everything, kind of paints a picture of our community, which to me seems disconnected. Does that seem? Yeah. So we've been looking at some stuff. So a lot of it is going to be, do you know that El Paso County rates 33 out of 58 counties in Colorado? So we're way down the list. 37% of our kids are on free and reduced lunch. We still have 5% of our children uninsured. Food and insecurity is about 15%. So there's a lot going on there.
Thank you. When you have that final report, I think we might have to submit it in spring, like early summer.
Right, the draft will go out in May. We're gonna try and build an infographic, so if you have any other data that's important, let me know, because I'm still kind of getting some. I've got a little bit of marijuana data that just came in. I'm talking to the state to get their opioid data. So we'll see. The only thing I saw is kind of interesting about marijuana is that we seem like our teenagers are increasing use since we legalized it. Because if it's legal, it's okay, right? Yeah. So there was a number to support that. So we have a lot of things to do in our community. Most of it is how to connect. So, anyway, so
I think from our last meeting, what we talked about was we've had lots of people trained. We have what's the next step? How do we actually then look at taking this information and implementing it into the work and in our community?
So it depends on what agencies want to do. I think people get really hung up on the idea that because we have this ACE tool, that you need to run around and score everybody, and you really don't. And it's not really a thing that you can do. You can use it for talking to folks about how stress can affect them and then affect their children, and that removes kind of that whole stigma. The other thing that is really helpful is if we just put in that trauma-informed language and just kind of as organizations start talking about where we can meet people at and understanding that we need to be cooperative and understanding what support these folks are getting. And I think the biggest stumbling block is A, data is hard to find, and B, communications between some of the big agencies is very difficult. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had to apply down at the Department of Human Services. Have you ever had to stand in their lines? I was totally traumatized. I had to do it recently, and it's an extremely traumatic event. And services are very difficult in those lines. Not to pick on DHS, but it's just a mess anyway. So I don't know. I mean, I think part of it is you can look at things. I mean, I think this positive solution sounds great because you're bringing in trauma-informed ideas. And as long as your staffs are educated, the biggest thing is your staffs have to be educated on what adversity is, how it affects the brain, and they have to buy into the idea. I can sit in schools and talk about trauma, but when I hear everybody wants to do behavioral charts with point systems, and I'm going, these kids don't know how to delay gratification, so your point system isn't the best way to go. And then I always get the answer back, well, we don't want to reward them if they're behaving bad. So that whole idea of the bad child in school systems is a really hard stepping stone. Matt Bennett just did a huge podcast on the bad child. There is no bad child. So I don't know how you change that language, and I think that's the biggest thing. So I think we talk about education, but we need to keep pushing the whole idea of what adversity actually does, and make sure that we've got everyone, I mean down to the janitor involved. I don't care who it is. I actually had a bartender come to one of my trainings, which I thought was absolutely wonderful. Who does more psychiatric care than a bartender? So, I mean, it's that whole idea. I also am somewhat amazed that I don't feel like we have any support from the city or the county. Do we have any support on this work when we talk about it? Have we educated any city or county officials? I don't think I have. Has anybody talked about this with them? So that's the other thing, so if we really want to put driving policies, we somehow need to bring them in also. I don't know where we are in any of those. I try to reach out to them, but I get nowhere. So that's a good one if you guys have any ties, is how do we get our city and county officials involved? That's been my biggest stumbling block.
Well, and given the importance of relationships, and so much of our work is relationships through the coaching and the trainings and the one-on-one interventions, that I think even figuring out some concrete ways to integrate that into those existing relationships could be really powerful as well.
Yeah. I feel like we've spent a lot of time educating. I've spent a lot of time, and like Colleen, she brought her whole staff in, which was wonderful. It's just that I think a lot of people have the information, but it's giving them permission to share it with that next person down the line. It's just kind of like your Pyramid Plus. You're wondering why your attendance down. If they're educating themselves, my God, you have just reached the epitome of what you need to do. I don't know how we can put it into agencies to make it okay to share that information. And how do we reach more parents? I mean, I would love for Walmart to let me go in and do a brown lunch, but I don't know, go in and talk to their employees, right? And that's what a lot of people say, well, how many parents are you educating? I said, a lot. They said, well, how many parent groups do you go to? I said, I don't. But think about how many of you that are a parent that we've educated, right?
So Kathy, can you expand on that more? So you'd love to reach parents, you'd love to have a brown bag lunch. What would be the goal of the meeting? And this, mark this down just as naive, I mean, I think this is a very interesting topic as we talk about how do we implement this work into the community to make that impact, what would be the goal? What would you like to come out with from the outcomes, and what would that look like? What would that discussion look like?
So part of that would be just doing like what Colleen's talking about doing with your positive solution. Giving people the basic understanding of what stress is doing to them and what's doing to their children, right? And maybe how it's influencing them. And then removing that blame and shame or the stigma of needing help and helping them move forward with being able to maybe help each other or, maybe even making places like Walmart understand that sometimes you have these employees who maybe are missing a lot of time, but instead of being punitive, learn how to support them, right? So it's that whole idea of building that, more of that community so that we understand how to support each other. It's really what it is.
One of the conversations we had with our staff, because the ACE tool really narrows down what is measured for adverse childhood experiences to come up with that score, we had our staff begin to explore with the children and families that we work with, what are other things, so that it is much less stigmatized, so military deployments and frequent parent separation, the children coming out of the neonatal intensive care unit and the amount of trauma that they experience while they're in the neonatal intensive care unit, and other just things that families are enduring every day. That doesn't have to be abuse, neglect,
So there's a lot of literature, and part of what some of the other groups have done is just to that point, they've added other questions. That's why I don't know if that tool is the most important thing, right? Because if divorce and separation, well, then that's deployment, correct? And if you look at living in a stressful environment based on household dysfunction, then what is the neighborhood dysfunction? If that's murder, if that's crime, if that's everybody in poverty, if that's, if that's unemployment, then that is your stress. It can be a community stress. It can be looking at somebody by zip code. I know some of the reforms that we were looking at in Medicaid, there was actually one community that actually started paying a higher tier to people who treated people that they said were in targeted neighborhoods because the amount of stress in that neighborhood. So people are starting to look at that idea. But it's just, I know when I talk to people and I show the tool, I always say, but this is just those original questions. There's many other questions we can ask. Somebody even brings up frequent moving of schools. Is that traumatic to children? That can be traumatic to children, correct? So it's anything that can cause trauma. The other thing is when you look at trauma or you look at stress, there's positive stress, right? Positive stress is that something happens and your parents come over or whoever comes over, soothes you, takes care of you, and then you're fine. You do need that in your life. Then there's things that are tolerable stress, right? Whereas it's a death in a family. And as long as you have, that's an example, but as long as you have good parental support or a good caregiver or someone who helps you, then you can make it through that trauma, right? When we talk about that toxic stress, we're talking about that ongoing pervasive or where you don't have support. So it can be something pretty simple in your lifetime, right? But you didn't have a caring parent. You didn't have someone who helped you process that. They spend a lot of time talking about that. The biggest message we can give to our community is that we've had these stresses. If we become aware of it and we try to reduce it, then just think about how we're helping the next generation, right? And then our kids have less, and then there's less transmission down. A lot of people talk about it even as life course, right? Life course perspective. So, and you can tie that back to when we worked at maternal child health, the African American women and why they had poor birth outcomes. So a lot of that they talked about life course perspective or intergenerational transmission of stress related to racism. So, there's a lot of examples that we could use if people would just, I suppose, give us the platform.
We're even beginning to change the way we write our grants to focus on health outcomes as opposed to educational benefit, because it's what tends to be understood more broadly, and is relevant, so.
Because the statistics around children with 3 or more ACEs is they're more likely to fail a grade. They are more likely to have speech and language. A lot of them end up in special education. They're more likely to do poor on standardized testing. Please highlight that one. And the other thing is there are kids that tend to be expelled from schools. So there is a huge tie-in with that. And then you look at somebody like Jim Hinkle and his work, you can see the effects of kids who have had a lot of historical trauma, you know, in their own lives or their families' lives, and they may live in an impoverished neighborhood, and then they ended up in the juvenile justice system. And then what happens, and they can't get hired because they don't have the skills. And Pierce County, Washington is the one who put out the statistic around when they looked at kids who were adjudicated, the kids with the highest A scores that were in adjudication had been expelled from school for the first time in second grade, 85%. So this expulsion thing has to change. And so, I mean, that's some of that Colorado Kids numbers when you look at that, so there's so much you could put into this, and statistically, I have a great thing about stress and work and how, you know, these people become unemployable. A lot of them end up having on-job injuries, well, if you think about it, because the perception and their attention is damaged when they're kids, if they've had a lot of stress, and they tend to get more workplace injuries. It all makes sense if you start putting it all together. So the cost to our society is huge. So I just think that it'd be a great place to start talking to even just the general public like you're doing, because it empowers them to understand what's going on in their life and maybe get help. But it also teaches them how to advocate a little bit. And if they start talking about it, it starts going. And if we could get a few, you know, other agencies to start listening a little bit, especially in the business world, that's another world that's hard to break into. I really don't think most places really care. I mean, if I said it or not. So that community platform is huge, and that common language is huge.
So is there a template, or is that something that could be so, for the brown bag lunch of the people that have been trained, or is that something that, what I hear you recommending is that if this group and build with our partners wants to take on, you highly recommend some type of community outreach
Right.
with a particular message.
Right, and I think it's just basically back to our core stuff that we got out of ACE Interface. It's pretty straightforward, it's geared to be for the general public. You don't have to teach the in-depth brain science that we do to professionals, you just pull it out. It can be half hour, 45 minutes long, but it just gives people a chance to start seeing themselves, right?
And then the next step with possible, okay, if you start to see yourself, here's some supports.
Here's
And
some
here's some
support.
things going on in the community.
And that's exactly how
Yes.
my staff reacted, was that they came into the retreat and we warned them ahead of time that it was going to be sensitive information and that it may be sensitive for them personally, not just in the families that they worked with. But they come in thinking that the big thing they're gonna get out of it is how to help families that they struggle with, and they walk away with more introspective kind of thinking. And so it is powerful in that way.
It changes you if you really listen to it. It changes how you view other people. It changes me to understand, to do that pause, to reflect where my feelings are coming from. Are they my feelings? Are they my client's feelings? Why am I reacting this way? Some of this is your own personal bias, right? It does teach that, and that's the biggest thing when you look at, like, when Harvard talks about what is resiliency? What's the biggest thing that you can talk to about people working with each other? The thing is to take that pause and to step back. The other thing is, I know you guys all know this motivational interviewing. There you go. That's a lot of that is working with clients.
Looking at the clock,
I'm sorry.
Kathy, no.
I talk
This
too
has
much,
been
I know.
fantastic. I would just, we don't have time for a discussion today. Are people interested in discussing this and what this might look like? And Kathy, can I invite you back to help us
Yeah.
facilitate this conversation and
And I'm gonna
maybe,
put some thought into it.
okay,
Because there is some really good information, and I don't know what you're looking for, but Harvard Center of Developmental just put out
Yes.
all the resiliency
Yes.
things by age. Did you see those?
yes, I did.
They're
And it is-
wonderful.
It is,
They're
it's good
wonderful.
stuff.
So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we could,
And I think we can build on, like I said, I think we had
Yeah.
5 or 6 community partners that wanted to be here but could not. And so I think we can definitely build on this next time, and maybe you mentioned county. If anybody has any county contacts, I'm thinking public health we do.
I've
Oh,
got
we
several
have those.
DHS.
Perfect.
we have, I've trained DHS, I have master trainers in public health. They're there, they're fine. what I'm hoping to accomplish, part of the reason why I was interested in the early milestone grant is because that's Sally Potter and Jen May. Not
Right.
Her Child, which is supposed to be the group we're supposedly partnering with the most. So please, if you get around those people, give them a 3-second speech on the importance of this.
And bring them here, or bring it, join the conversation.
We're trying to join the conversation because I do know that the Department of Youth Corrections actually worked with Sanctuary, Senior Bloomsford for 3 years. So there are pockets that have bought into it, but.
So education and then just a message of supports. And
Exactly.
that support the work that really gets this message out in the community, so.
Well,
Does
and
that make sense, everybody? Is that helpful? Is that, any other thoughts before we have to depart? And I'm trying to watch the time, so I'm sorry, I'm cutting this really short, but because I think we could go for, and I think you put us on a great path, Kathy. Because that's really what we were asking, what's that next step? And I think you gave us
She
some
engenders passion for this.
I love it, I wrote down, call Kathy about some exercise. Everybody, thank you for letting us take this, we will make this available to those who could not be here. I do want to give a plug, Alliance for Kids Council meeting February 7th, 2:30 to 4 o'clock, right across the street. We're bringing in Colorado Children's Campaign, and you're gonna hear all about the legislation that impacts children and families right now. Bill, if you've ever heard Bill, he's fantastic. Hopefully nobody's gonna call him in for an emergency legislative meeting. But we will have a backup plan if that happens, but come, and then immediately after that, we're having an open house here with food, and then you can ask people questions and things like that, so thanks for being here, and hopefully we'll see you soon as well, Sarah, and join the conversation. Great, so, thank you. Thank you. Happy, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Good to
I
see
didn't
you.
know